Crazy boy, who, as I mentioned, comes from the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, which is located 250 miles downstream on the Athabasca River on the shores of Lake Athabasca from the tar sands development in northern Alberta. Gitz is in town as a representative, of First Nations communities that are fighting the tar sands. Has been participating in the National Power Shift Conference this weekend, and so I would like to invite Gitz to come up as well. And again, if you have questions or reactions to his presentation, just hold on to that, and we'll have opportunity for everybody to dialogue at the end of the panel. Gitz.
Okay, my name is Gitz. I am both Dene and Poucachiche, which is Blackfoot, more commonly known as Blackfoot.
Yeah.
All right. I'm here today to talk to you about the tar sands. But really quickly, I just want to make a quick point about today's direct action that happened at the House of Commons. I was a part of that, and that was not. That wasn't supported by Power Shift or any of the local people that organized it. That was a bunch of youth coming together with a social conscience and kind of bringing the forefront issues of.
You want to explain what happened?
Yeah, I will. And it's just coming together as a social, environmental conscience, saying stuff has to change and we need to bring it to the forefront. So a better place to do it than where all the politicians sit. So what happened was we all went to the House of Commons when they do Q&A. Does everybody know how that works? Basically, all the politicians sit on their respective sides and they argue about stuff, and while they're talking, like, slander and insults are thrown back and forth, and people are cut off midway through when they're speaking. And so following the steps of the Canadian government, few of the people decided to just be jump up and make a statement, sign the Indigenous right, or the rights for the Indigenous peoples, the Declaration of Indigenous Peoples. And some people were saying, sign Bill C-311. And then it was in our group, there was 3 people that were going to do it. And then one person jumped up and said it. And then the first person, I don't know if he wants to review himself at all. Anyways, this guy jumps up. This guy or girl jumps up and says something, and then makes a call response to our section. And so people are like, yeah. And it was like a call response. So when I say sign, y'all say 311. That's what happens. It's sign. Everyone's like 311, sign 311. Security came, grabbed him, and took him out. And then somebody else jumped up and started, continuing on the call response. And then security came in, took her out. And then another guy jumped up. And the call response was totally spontaneous. It wasn't planned. It just happened. And then the third person jumped out, who I thought was going to be the last person. They took that person out. And it was this gentleman. And I was like, okay, so it's over now. And all of a sudden, some more people just started jumping up on our section. They took that lead role and they just kind of jumped up, and we continued the call response. I didn't say anything. I was kind of sitting there wondering how this is going to work out. I didn't say anything at all. And I was sitting beside one Caucasian male to my right and 2 Caucasian females to my left. And the security guard walks over, and they're jumping up. They're shouting. I'm not saying anything. And the security guard walks over, and kind of looks over, and he's like, "Hey, you." And he's pointing right at me. And he's like, "You need to get up, and you need to get out right now." And I'm like, I didn't even say anything. I'm just sitting here. And then this other security guard walks by. He's like, "Oh no, he didn't do anything." And they're still taking people out. They're still doing the call and response. And it was weird because it was kind of being in a James Bond film where they never run into the bad guys, because he's actually in. I didn't even know where they got hired from. So then after he accuses, he's like, "You need to get out of here." There's this black girl sitting in the corner behind, and she's just this young black girl. He walks over to her and says, "You have to leave right now." And she was really impressionable, really young, so she got up and she was actually crying. And they walked her out. And then they kind of took our whole section and pushed us outside. But it was cool because, it was weird because when we got outside, the press was there, and they're like, how does it feel interrupting the call or the Q&A period in the House of Commons? And they asked us that, and I was like, well, have you ever watched the Q&A? They're not civil to each other at all. They're really kind of mean to one another. We're just emulating what our leaders of the country do. In my mind, that's all we did. And we brought this forefront issue of being of green alternatives, of signing the Kyoto Agreement, of the Declaration of Human Rights to the forefront. That's all we did, in my mind. It was amazing, though. It was so awesome to be a part of that. It was so awesome to see what people were willing to give up for change. So that's what happened today. And again, just too stressed, because I don't know what this paper's going to spin, how they're going to spin it. It was just a bunch of youth that came together with the same common goal, all coming together with one mind. And it wasn't supported by any of the people who brought Power Shift together. It wasn't even a part of Power Shift. It was just everyone coming together. So, I'm going to talk to you a bit about how the tar sands works. And I'm just going to briefly go over it because it's really complex and completely dry. But when you're going from, does anybody know where Fort McMurray is at all?
Yeah.
Okay, it's about 498 kilometers north of Edmonton. And once you hit like grassland, it's about a 2-hour drive from grassland, 2.5 hours. Once you hit grassland, it's boreal forest the whole way up. Like it's just thick forest all the way up. And then when you get there, and there's like wildlife, you always see moose, you always see deer, you see all kinds of animals. It's really cool. It's a really nice kind of scenic drive. There's hills and it's really, really pretty. And then you hit McMurray. It's a town. You drive up about like 60 kilometers, 50 kilometers, then you hit the tar sands. And once you hit the tar sands, all of that stuff stops. The boreal forest, everything around stops. A couple of years ago, it was like you drove into a white desert. You know, you had boreal forest, thick boreal forest, and you drive into this unnatural desert. And it was like for miles around, you would see this white desert. And I always wondered why they did that. Like, I had no idea what was going on. You would just drive and you would see that. I'm like, this is like really weird. Why would they cut all this stuff up? And then a couple of years after, they started pouring in tailings ponds, which is like the most toxic substance around. There's other toxic stuff, but it's super toxic. And they just started pouring it everywhere. So when you go up there, you see these man-made lakes of toxins. To the left and third. You can drive right by this thing. It's kind of like, everyone here has probably watched Lord of the Rings, right? It's kind of like you're going through the Shire, and then you go right into Mordor. That's basically what it's like. There's this really interesting extraction process that goes with it. They got to heat up, they got to boil up the tar sands, they got to heat up and extract out of it. When they heat up, they usually use coal, which is, there's no such thing as clean coal, despite what media wants you to believe, there's no such thing as clean coal. And then I kind of want to talk about the tailings ponds. I'm pretty sure my cousin can go over some other things. But the tailings ponds are interesting because when you look at it from a very far point of view, like just like, you know, from here to the end of the wall, it looks like a lake. It looks like a river. You get close, you start noticing a smell. You start noticing that it's actually like a sludge. And then when you're close enough, you're like, there's no way in hell I'm going to swim in that or drink out of it. But if you're a migratory bird and you've been flying for the whole day, you'll look down and you're going to look for places to land for the night or to get something to drink. I think it was last year, it might have been this year. These birds decided, like, that looks like a lake. I'm going to land in it. And 400 of them flew down. And I think they rescued like 2 of them. The rest all died. They just, as soon as they hit the sludge, they got sucked right under. The 2 that they pulled out, just a show of hands, because they cleaned these birds off and they did everything for these birds. But how many of you guys here think those 2 birds lived? Just a show of hands. If you think they lived, raise your hand. Good, yeah, they both died. And then they decided to like put a net around and start seeing how many birds they could pull out. And they pulled out 1,606.
Oh my God.
This is just migratory birds, okay? And there's so many toxins that are in it, and it's unusable. It's the 2nd biggest reservoir in the world, just this toxic stuff that they're pouring around. I think it's like, what, 60 kilometers squared of just like one big man-made lake of toxin. So when you think about that, when you think about like having this toxic waste that's just going to kill anything and everything around it lands by it, there's nothing that can grow by it. There's nothing. You can drive out there and you'll see nothing growing by it. So when you think about that, you think about like making a responsible choice or even an ethical choice of where you're going to place this tailings ponds, how far away would you put it